Good afternoon and thank you for joining today's presentation. Before we get started, I would like to review a few items so you can actively participate in today's web event. On screen we have an example of the GoToWebinar attendee interface. And this window is where attendees can see the presenter screen and also a control panel where the attendees can interact with organisers. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer in the upper right corner. Clicking on the arrows opens and closes the control panel. The audio pane provides audio information, and there are two options. To join audio through your computer, select Use Mic and Speakers. Then click Audio Setup to select your computer speaker or headset device. You can also join audio through your telephone. Select Use Telephone, then dial the number, access code and audio pin listed. During the presentation, you will also have the ability to send questions to our webinar staff through the questions pane. Simply type your question in and press send. At the end of the presentation, we will do a question and answer session to answer as many questions as we have time for. And there is an option for asking questions directly to the presenter. That's that little hand signal there. To do this, raise your hand and we will be able to unmute your microphone. If you prefer to keep your control panel open during the presentation, click View in the top menu and uncheck Auto Hide. I will now be passing you over to Jessie to commence the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Georgia. Today's webinar, Planning a Career, is presented by Ray Pavry. Ray is the Managing Director and founding shareholder of Sustainigy's business. Sustainigy is a specialist HR and staffing company for electrical talent. He has been in this role since July 2000, leading a specialist team of electrical engineers, staffing specialists, and other business talent. Prior to his business interest, Ray worked for 12 years in an employment capacity in various strategy, marketing, and other senior management. Ray's early business interests were in consulting, commencing with sustainability-related work through Sustainigy, doing this for around 2 years, and some of his clients included BOC Gas, Eraring Energy, and iPart. He reshaped the business to focus on specialist staffing for electrical talent, recognizing an unmet need in the marketplace. Ray's academic background includes chartered accountancy qualifications from Price Waterhouse and an MBA from the AGSM at the University of New South Wales. He has also completed various undergraduate degrees and is a committee member for various professional bodies relevant to the electrical industry. So we'd now like to invite Ray Pavry.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. What I'd like to do before I start is perhaps lay the, I guess, the groundwork for what will be happening in the next half an hour to 45 minutes. The 6 important aspects, I call them the 6 degrees of elevation. I've highlighted them as planning. I guess that's critical. Make sure that you do have one. Learning the fact that it is a lifetime thing, so it's not like you complete your degree and forget all about it. Initiative, the fact that if there are 2 candidates or 2 individuals that are equal to each other, it's always the initiative that's shown that allows one to get ahead. The fact that career planning should be relied on information and not emotion to plan ahead. It's perhaps actually one industry Can everyone see my screen now? Yeah, okay. It was just highlighted that people couldn't see the screen. So what I've been conveying is, I guess, the 6 aspects that I want to put the flag in the ground in terms of what I'll be covering. Presentation, the fact that it's important, and managing the career is personal. The fact that you've got to adopt a sustainable, enduring, long-term avenue through which that career aspiration can be met. Let me start off by, first of all, highlighting why is career planning important, because none of the rest, I guess, would make sense if you aren't fully enthusiastic about recognizing that career planning is important. I guess a lot of us, I've tried to relate that to something that we would encounter on a day-to-day basis. A lot of us would be, I guess, at some stage or the other, having purchased a major asset like a house or a car. Georgia, could we perhaps have the poll that I'd like to do on today's participants? How many of you all would have either purchased a house or a major asset and relied on, I guess, what we see to be all of the, I guess, the important aspect that goes in making for a good purchase of that asset? So using web-based research sites, using newspapers, using real estate agencies, discussing it with various people, including those that are close around you, speaking to those that have walked a similar path before. So you'd speak to people that have lived in that suburb, who have lived, I guess, in that street perhaps, certainly doing a lot of homework in terms of what are property values in that street, spending several months planning for it, because real estate purchase, as you know, does take time, spending most weekends, putting aside a financial budget, and purchasing reports, whether they be structural, whether they be, I guess, the rightful ownership, etc. Now, a lot of you would say, look, this actually makes sense, because buying a house costs a lot of money. It can be anything from $500,000 upwards, and so a lot of you would intuitively say, yeah, look, that's what I would do. Now, could I perhaps have people convey to me whether they would be using all or most of these particular aspects when they would purchase a major asset? Georgia, have we had the results?
Yes, we have, Ray. 92% have said yes, they have purchased a major asset, and 8% have voted no. Okay.
Now, let's actually look at that, relating it to the career. So if we look at these same aspects and align them against one's career, you might, I guess, intuitively say, look, a house purchase is a lot of money, but when you relate that to your career and you look at an average, let's say $100,000, give or take, in the fact that in the earlier years you might earn less, but in the later years of your career you certainly would earn more, which means that on average $100,000 is not an unreasonable amount per annum over, let's say, a 10 to 15-year period. And now you accumulate that, and that starts to add up as an acquisition of an asset, which is your career, no differently to your purchase of a major asset like a house or a car. Georgia, could we do a poll perhaps, I guess, of people to see how many individuals on today's webinar would adopt using all or most of these? So when I say speaking to several others, how many would use mentors? How many would I guess, spend several months planning for it rather than on the whim of being dissatisfied one particular day, start looking for jobs and then make a decision 4 to 6 weeks thereafter? I guess how many of you all would purchase information about the company you want to work for? So going to Google, buying reports. I guess for publicly listed companies, there certainly should be a lot more information available. So Georgia, could we do a quick poll of how many on our webinar would do all or most of this for career planning?
Sure, I'm just launching it now.
I've intentionally, I guess, included this as a starting point because I really want everyone today to feel fired up about recognizing that this is critical, this is important, it needs a lot of time and effort. The fact that you are participating, of course, shows that we have an audience that's slanted in that direction. But personally, I do know that a lot of people would use 4, 6, 8 weeks, and then they've moved around to their new job. Have we got the results, Georgia?
Yes, we have. 58% have said yes, and 42% have voted no. Okay,
so at least we can see that while there is a large number of us that do use the detail in planning for a career, there's certainly scope for improvement there. So on a financial perspective, certainly career planning is important. I've used the house purchase or the asset purchase example to demonstrate this. And the question that I ask is, why do we put in so much effort into the one aspect and not in the other, when both of them, I guess, financially at least, are very similar? I'm also asserting, I guess, that with around the 8 or so hours per day, a lot of us are spending 1/3 of our life, so to speak, at work. And the fact that you may or may not be in the ideal career of your choice, of course, does affect emotional health when accumulated over a number of years. So with that premise of career planning is critical, is important, let's launch into, I guess, the view from the top. Now, as part of, I guess, a lateral way of seeing how industry leaders plan their careers and what were their tips for job seekers, I'd had an email sent out for individuals to have a look at what were the discussions that Chris Groh, previous MD at Cytec and now Senior VP International for their global industry business. I had John Immelman, who is the Managing Director of Endress & Hauser, Upali Mahaliana, who's the equivalent of a Chief Electrical Engineer for PB, Parsons Brinckerhoff, and we had Greg Pauline, the Executive Director of Bilfinger Berger. Now, rather than go through what was probably a 15, 17, 20-minute accumulation of their talks, I've actually gone through and done a set of learnings from each of them. But Georgia, could I have a quick straw poll of how many individuals from today's webinar have actually seen that prior to coming to this webinar today? Of course, if anyone hasn't had a chance to look at this before coming into today's webinar, either contact Georgia or have a look at your email that we would have sent earlier, which would allow you to have a look at that at your own time. But it's certainly extremely powerful. Have you got the results, Georgia?
Yes, there's still a few more coming in. And I can and there are the results there. 57% have viewed the presentation.
Sorry, what was that again, Georgia?
57% have viewed the presentation.
So we've got at least half that haven't. Now, rather than go through these presentations now, because as I said, they accumulate to about 20 minutes, they are available. But what I would like to do is perhaps go through the learnings that I've been able to bring through from the presentations done by Chris Crow. The individuals, the people on today's webinar that have looked at this would recognize that Chris Crow said in his earlier years he was presented an opportunity to get into sales. Now, that was at a very early stage in his life. He grabbed it. My assertion is when opportunities do present themselves, you've got to go for them. Ensure the decision to join the company aligns with a pre-planned career path. Don't just join the first company that comes along, was another assertion that Chris had made. Having a view of where you want to go is critical, is important. Relating that to your strengths and inherent expertise. And while I'm going through this, you will see that within my presentation, a lot of, I guess, what's encapsulated by industry leaders will come through in terms of the 6 strategies for career success. Researching companies you wish to head to, do what you feel passionately about was what he brings through in his talk. And he did assert also that you can learn a lot at some stage in your career from working in a large multinational. The next one was John Immelman from the MD at Endress & Hauser. His assertion was that within, I guess, the electrical engineering field or within what's a professional background, having a solid technical base is certainly critical. Having a plan, and we can start to see the trend here, you're not going to head anywhere like a ship captain would if they did not have a plan in terms of their voyages. I guess certainly that's going to be difficult if you don't have a plan. Finding a company or organization that allows you to explore the plan you wish to put in place. Be involved in continuous formal education. Working hard was, I guess he certainly used work ethic in saying those that are the champions do what's above and beyond the call of duty. Ensuring the plan has balance, and it's certainly something that John has asserted. And depending on the circumstances, the fact that plans can change, and you need to accept the fact that plans can change, but you must have a plan. The next one was Greg Pulley, and his assertions were he had some mentors who in his earlier years pushed and pulled him in the right direction that he wished to head to. He mentioned he had the opportunity to work on a 278 or a very large megawatt power project, and as a young, I think he's a 25, 27-year-old, he grabbed the opportunity that came up. He had the opportunity to go overseas and took on a lot more challenging projects early in his career. I guess one of his other assertions was the fact that he worked with a wide range of people and organizations. Because in the scheme of things, as you're going up the career ladder, you certainly will meet a variety of individuals, a variety of ethnicities, a variety of, I guess, just different people. And the more you throw yourself into that earlier in your career, the better it will be for you. And the last one was his assertion that the electrical engineering degree is a great thing to have. The final speaker there that we had was Upali. And Upali's assertions were paying attention to detail, being a strong communicator, and that's both listening, speaking, and in addition writing and getting the information before, I guess, making a persuasive case to move forward. And the last one was the fact that having a professional qualification helps get the recognition from your peers and will certainly enhance your career prospects. So having gone through that, let's now go through the 6 strategies. Ensuring that you do have a plan. In terms of what is career planning, my definition of that is relating the stock. It's almost like an inventory of what you have with the vision of where you want to head in light of the circumstances you're facing. And these 3 things, I guess, have this fine balance of tug. So it relates to the skills that you have, where you want to head, but it could be that you have headed off on a particular path. You've had young kids, and so the length of time during which you need to achieve that might just need to be elongated. So the circumstances you're facing may certainly need to tie in with your career plan, otherwise it's not going to be sustainable. Now it's easy to say taking stock of yourself, but what I've tried to do, and after my presentation, we'll indicate to you where there are certain templates, a template of taking stock of yourself, a template of, I guess, other aspects within the seminar which you can use later on after the presentation has been completed. In taking stock of yourself, I'm suggesting know your own personality and your own interests. What do I mean by that? Have a piece of paper and start writing down. Do you like being in the office or out of the office? Do you like being on the phone, behind a computer, or like being in a face-to-face dialogue with people? Do you like being your family or away from your family? If you're flying, is that going to be an issue for you? In a technical, hard-skilled area, or being associated with softer skills like training and development, with the ability to move overseas or not? Is it in sustainable tomorrow's industry, or does it not matter? Is it in consulting or not in consulting? So you can see that there are a lot of choices, and I guess it's almost like a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is I dislike it immensely, 10 is where I like it a lot. You can start going through these and starting to put down what are the areas that you have your passion for, and your own personality certainly will help you towards that. The next is identifying the activities you like, list the time you would like to have in the activities of interest. Make a list of the type of people that you would like to work with. So for example, do you want to work for someone who supervises you, or do you want to be self-managed? Do you want to work with people who talk a lot or people who are quiet? Do you like to socialize with people at work or not? What sort of peers do you want? What sort of corporate values and ethics are important to you? What size of company do you like? I think Chris and John had mentioned perhaps working for a large company helps, but then several that have worked in a large company know that politics and confrontation are almost synonymous, and so I guess it comes down to whether being in a smaller company and learning are important traits that you can take on board, or is working for a larger company something that you wish to include in your portfolio. What type of office environments are important to you? The job titles that fit what you want to do in your next job. In fact, you might even write a job description that describes your ideal role. A list of potential industries that have the job you want. How far are you willing to commute to your new job? Now, the next aspect, I guess, of relating the stock to vision and circumstances comes down to examining the different career paths which align to the stock take of yourself. One of the aspects, if you remember, I asked how many of you would have sought out advice from others when you are planning for your career. Seek out a mentor who's gone down that path before, because the worst thing would be that you head down a particular path on the basis that it sounds sexy, but when you reach there you realize, hey, this is not really what I want, and that would be 3-5 years down the track. So seek out a mentor. Visualize where you want to be in your next career point, and I mentioned that as a career point. Let's say your ambition is to be an MD. Now, unless you've picked 3 to 5 career points in your progress, it's going to be difficult to visualize getting from where you are to where you want to head unless it's broken down into smaller steps. Understand what that career point or a set of career points means to you personally, given your own circumstances and skill sets. So let's say you've just graduated, you start off on that career, in 3 years' time, let's say you get married. Well, part of, I guess, your direction should relate to the circumstances and the time frame over the next 7 to 12 years, so that you've got a chance of saying, look, in the next 2 or 3 years, this is where I want to head. But in the next 10 or 12 years, ultimately, this is the direction I want to head towards. And really, the next step would be building the bridge between where you are and where you want to head through training, through identifying a series of employers that will help you get there. Now, one of the aspects that's important is the time horizon. A lot of people don't realize, but time is a resource. A lot of people use their cash, to training, etc. But when you say that instead of doing this in 6 months' time, so that what I do is sustainable, I'm going to do this in the next 12 to 18 months' time, but make sure that I definitely do it. time then becomes a resource if it's used properly. And one of the things I do, for example, is at the end of every year, I do that, I guess, 31st December or just straight after that, get a reappraising of what your end point is and relate that to the year that's passed by. And it's important to keep a balance so that where you are heading is sustainable. After all, it's much better that you reach that destination than you rush off trying to head there and find that it's just not aligning with your circumstances, particularly over a 7, 10, 15-year period. You will need to recognize that all of us face some pressures or the other on a personal front through our lives, and that will need to be incorporated in our career search. The next aspect is the fact that learning is a lifetime thing. Now, while several of us may have a starting point of a degree or a technician or a technical background, I'm suggesting that those that are doing the degree should spend 100%. So don't waste your time. Use it effectively. No degree does not mean no career. There's quite a few people such as Bill Gates. You've heard of him, founder of Microsoft. He was a Harvard dropout, and he came up with this operating system for computers. Michael Dell stopped going to school at the age of 19. His assets as of 2009 were worth $12.3 billion, and Henry Ford. So what I'm suggesting is learning is a lifetime thing. It's not the fact that you either have done a degree or not, but the fact that you continue to do that throughout your life is important. Certainly, I guess if we look at what was recommended by some of our expert speakers, if you can do further qualifications, great. So CPNG or RPEQ, if you have an opportunity and your company sponsors you, go forth and do it. The last point that I'd like to make out here is, irrespective of where you are at, the gap between where you are and where you want to head could be bridged with time, as I said, relevant training, whether it's on the job or academic, and work experience accumulated for whatever source you can get, and a desire to get outside your comfort zone. So for example, in the earlier years, communicating with people was very important to me. I joined a variety of Toastmasters clubs. I made it a point to listen to my own presentations and try to readdress, I guess, the way I could redo them in future. So the work experience could be accumulated from sources outside of work as well. And certainly getting outside your comfort zone is the only way to bridge that gap. The third aspect that I talk about is initiative. It's impossible to get ahead if you don't take small experiential risks. And this can be at your own company. So I'm not suggesting throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's no reason why career progression cannot happen at the company at which you are at by taking small experiential risks. I remember when I was working for one of the large US companies, the CEO at that stage had encouraged a lot of people in the back office to go out in the front office and do sales for about a week, just so that people could get a chance to understand what it was to look the client in the eye, and then that enabled all of the back office to jump hoops to make sure that in future, I guess, the sales were well supported. But at that stage, I took that step of going out and doing sales for about 3 to 4 months, I guess, and it was a great experience for me in terms of my setting up this business. But it couldn't have happened if I didn't take that experiential risk. Propose projects aligned to your company's and your own interests as well. So take the initiative, come up with projects that where your company benefits, but of course you benefit too. Simplify your boss's job by understanding their pressure points. You are going to be promoted if you can get your boss to get promoted. There's no doubt about that. So if there is a way in which you can promote their interests and understand their pressure points, there's a better than average chance you will get ahead. Be a self-starter. And test yourself regularly to say, what initiative did I personally take today? One of the questions that I ask candidates is, can you tell me what are the 3 initiatives that you've taken throughout your life? And if they can't respond, I guess, immediately, it does tell me a certain aspect about the profile of the individual that I'm interviewing. Using information, not emotion. a lot of jobs sound sexier than they should be. For example, I've said owning and running your own business. Well, yes, certainly that's the area that I wanted to head into, but it comes with its own aspects that people need to be aware of. In the same instances, commissioning work, it certainly does accumulate a few dollars for the individuals doing that, but it means time away from the family. If someone's involved in design and they want to get into project management, that's all fine. But what if they just haven't been able to adjust to dealing with people, and they're happy doing the design but not haven't built the bridge to reach there? So what I'm, I guess, trying to convey out here is base your decision on information, not emotion. Ask those that you trust, your family, friends, work colleagues. It's not you versus the rest. It's you and the rest in your search. If necessary, get a mentor. Read books, magazines. There's so much information around. And take many risks in extending yourself while you are at your current work. Write articles and hire professionals to your advantage, a business coach if required. So to give you an example, I've had different business coaches through my own life, and depending on what stage I am in my career, I've picked a business coach that's able to help me in the next 12 to 18 months. The fifth aspect that I want to highlight out here is that presentations, particularly I guess in career planning, are important, whether they be in terms of your resume or whether they be in terms of the interview. Now for the resume, I've got some guidance out here. Make sure that there is an executive summary. There's actually a very good saying. What it says is that if you looked at the first page of your CV and you folded that in half horizontally, and then you looked at the first half of the page, most of what you want to convey as to why you are the best person for the job should be in that first half of the page in the executive summary. Of course, the other aspects are having a personal section, an educational section, experience in chronological order. Make sure there's enough white space and use, I guess, a color, but not too many colors in the font, just to highlight the different areas of your CV. If there are any gaps, then explain that. And if you've moved around, provide an explanation, because otherwise you're certainly asking people to make up their own views as to why that gap might exist. And once you've gone through the interview, I guess you will need referees, so make sure they're identified and available so that you don't search for referees who've gone missing over a period of years. In terms of the interview, present appropriately. An ideal way to dress would be to do some research, call up the receptionist, find out, I guess, the dress style of the place that you go to, and literally try to mirror that. Come on time or before time. Research the company. Have some, I guess, points in your own mind as to why are you the best person for this role even before going for the interview. Because if you are not convinced yourself, how are you going to persuade your interviewer that you are the right person for the role? Practice open-ended questions. So, aspects like, what's the greatest challenge faced? Come up with a few questions, or just Google interview questions, and you'll certainly find a lot of information. You could talk to Sustainagy, and we can certainly provide you with, questions that you can certainly start to have a think about. Listen, respond appropriately, and read body language of your interviewer while you are having that interview happen. The last point that I make is planning a career and managing a career is personal. Don't just do what others do. So the last point is make your journey sustainable. Base it on your plan, not on what what someone else is trying to do for you, whether it be parents or peers making a job sound sexier than it is. Do some homework. Base it on information, not egos. Calibrate your career plan based on circumstances, and don't be rigid. Have some flex. So if something happens, you could continue down that path, but something else is going to give. And the last point there is reassess the plan at the start or the end of every year to see if you're on track for where you want to head. So in summary, what I've got is the 6, I call them degrees of elevation, 6 strategies. Planning, the fact that it has to be based on a lifetime of learning. using initiative, information, presenting yourself well, and making that a journey that's personal to you. And I ask the question to you, 6 degrees of elevation or 6 degrees of separation between you and your ideal job? It's your choice. Over to you, Georgia.
Thank you, Ray, for that presentation. We'll now have a short question session for anyone who wants to just send in any questions. If you would like to get on the microphone, just raise your hand as I showed you earlier, and then I will be able to unmute your mic. Okay, we've had some questions come in. Ray, can you hear me properly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. The first question is from Ashish. Hi, I am a skilled migrant in electrical engineering. I made my initial entry in February 2009. Due to the recession, I could not get any jobs, so I came back and continued working in the Middle East. What skills should I accumulate to get a good opening in Australia? And how should I plan my career to get a foot in the door? Okay.
Ashish, could I perhaps actually ask that while that question is a great one to be having prior to coming to the presentation, were there aspects that you picked up from today's presentation that would highlight to you that, leave alone the circumstance of what might have happened across 2009, you would have had a vision of your wanting to come to Australia for a particular reason, and if you include all of the characteristics that caused you to come to Australia, given the fact that the market is picking up, are you now at a stage where you can continue down the current path? So it's not a case of what skills do I need to accumulate. You already do have the skills. Whatever the background is, was the reason why you were allowed to migrate into Australia, because those skills were in, I guess, short supply. What's important then to, I guess, be a bit flexible in terms of where the job arises. So if the job, let's say your initial interest was in Sydney, but the job came about in Gladstone, I would say for the first 12 or 18 months, if you are willing and able to move around, it would certainly help. I would suggest that looking only at job sites, whether they be Find All Electrical Jobs, which is a specialist site, or generalist job sites, what's important is to do some homework on the companies that are the ideal companies that you'd like to target. Know as much as possible about the decision makers, what projects come on board, where do the decision makers gravitate, namely to conferences or to events where you can meet them face to face. And I would actually start to make your approach directly to those companies, and in that fashion, you're not then just relying on someone else's agenda, namely the recruiter's agenda of putting the ad out, but you're laying out your own agenda of where you want to head, and you're actively starting to put things into place, getting information, getting to know the people, meeting them face to face, and in that sense, you'll be closer to your where you want to head. Does that help you, Ashish?
Ray, we've had another question come through.
Okay.
Ashish says thanks. Mm-hmm. But the next question is from Partha. He says switching roles is useful in getting experiences in different fronts and also in understanding hardships of other roles. However, that might bring some dissatisfaction to you when you are orientated in a particular way. How do you handle that dissatisfaction?
I guess I had mentioned taking experiential risks. So my logic in life is that if you're thinking about doing something, there are two choices. Either a yes, you can do it, no, you will not do it, or the third one is a maybe, I could do it down the track, but I guess I might not do it now. In that sense, I guess you've got a 33% chance of succeeding because you've got, the yes, the no, and the maybe. As soon as you've made a decision to convert that into a yes or a no only, namely that you'll either do it or, hang on, this is not for me, I'm going to get out, you've improved your probability to 50%. The fact that it might then actually go counter to your own personality or to other aspects and make you uncomfortable, well, that's life. So if you've taken the decision and switched roles, I'm sure there will be some learnings from it. The fact that you don't continue to do that and step away from it, again, that's life. Does that answer you, Partha?
Yes, Ray. Partha says thank you.
Okay.
We're going to continue the question session in our blog site. It's on our www.findallaelectricaljobs.com.au. There's actually a blog link on the homepage, and we will fix up everyone's questions after the presentation. But thank you to everyone who has participated in today's event, and if you would like any more information on where to find the templates or the 4 videos of our guest speakers, please email me. My email is now on your screen, and I will be able to send you the links through. Thank you.
Thanks, Georgia.